right, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Mindful Moment session. My name is Jean, and it's an honor to be able to host these sessions for you all. Excuse me. Um, this week we are going to be talking about the topic of breaking bad habits and improving 1% each day. So 1% being 1% better each day. So here we can see a graph, and just as a reference, all of the materials in this presentation or this session is coming from an award-winning author called James Clear. And he wrote the book called Atomic Habits, which focuses on building those little habits. So we're going to start off by talking about how basically everybody wants this kind of peak or some sort of success. And sorry, maybe I wasn't close enough to the microphone. Basically, everybody wants some sort of peak or success, but what people often don't realize is how your little actions that you perform each day, they actually really build up to that ultimate success or failure that you observe at the end of a certain time period or at a certain event. And basically, a focus here is on being a better person than you were yesterday and not comparing yourself to others around you, but maybe comparing yourself to the person who you were yesterday. And as we can see from this graph, we're going to do a little bit of math here. We can see that if we improve 1% each day, there's going to be exponential growth in our results. We can start from 1% and we can go to 37% in a year. And 37% might not seem like a lot. It's less than half. But if we consider if we continue building this 1% better every day, maybe even for just 2 or 3 years, we can reach 100%. And 2 or 3 years is a really short time compared to the average human lifespan. So, however, if we don't pay attention and we decline 1% each day, eventually we might reach 0%. And that might not be something that we think about initially when we start that 1% decline, but eventually it'll become more apparent. So, really, building good habits is like compound interest. The longer that you build them and the more that you repeat them, the more benefits you will see. In the beginning, it may be hard to see the benefits because it may be like an up and down situation, but eventually, you will get there. But of course, we can't rely on this eventually kind of concept because if we don't take action, eventually might never be reached. So I'm going to go through 4 stages of habit formation, and these are all adopted from James Clear. So noticing, wanting, doing, and liking. And just as a reminder, this is only one way to approach the situation of breaking bad habits or forming new habits. This is just one approach out of the many different approaches. And of course, there are certain modifications that you need to make with your certain situation, but these are just general guidelines. So stage 1 or 2 is noticing or wanting. We cannot perform or start building good habit if we don't even notice the need to kind of start that. So this kind of really ties in with mindfulness and being more aware of your actions and being more aware of what's happening in the present instead of being stuck in the past or daydreaming ahead to the future. So it's definitely something that's easy to talk about, but it's not easy to do. And so one kind of guideline we can do if we want to form a good habit is the snippet from James Clear. So this was part of a study, I think, and basically people who wrote during the next week and they talked about when, where, and how they would perform that good action or something that would lead to a good habit. When, where, and how, it gives you more clarity on how you might approach that process of building a good habit, and they were more likely to actually do it. And this seems like common sense, but not a lot of people do this when they're trying to perform good habits, at least from my experience. And so this is something that you might want to try if you want to, you're in that starting phase. So stage 2 or stage 3 actually is doing. So giving your goals a place to live in this world and not the world of yesterday or tomorrow. And I think one thing that would really facilitate that doing process is the environment. Like in biology, which I learned this year, we learned that basically what influences human development is not only the starting, which is the genetics, it's also environmental factors. And this doesn't really have to be something that's biological. I think we can all agree that the environment shapes us in more ways that we think, but we also can realize that we can also be architects of the environment. So what you can do is try to put more steps between you and bad habits and fewer steps between you and good habits so that it would be easier for you to perform that good habit. That's just a way of starting out. Because especially if it's been a thing that we've been putting off, this is a good way to start out. Also, a good strategy is the failure premortem, which is to think about maybe 6 months ahead. Think about if you failed, or maybe depends on the time period and depends on the how big your goal is in terms of how long you think ahead of failure. And think about some things that you would say to yourself if you were in that situation. And this helps us kind of with that long-term vision and also and kind of going past the short-term consequences or the short-term gain or loss. And this is also a snippet from James Clear. So obviously with a habit, the best way to build that habit is to repeatedly do it so that eventually it becomes an instinct. And why this is important is because typically, I read from somewhere that most of our actions that we perform in our day are based off of our habits or instincts. So they're unconscious. It strains us to be conscious and like strategically do something that we might usually not do. And that's why it's so hard to start that process of changing, because anything that's kind of different from what we're doing right now, we sometimes treat it as painful or something that there's no reward associated with it because we're not used to doing it. And so with more difficult goals, you have to have more repetitions, but with easier goals, it may require less repetitions. And one thing to also keep in mind is that with bad habits, if you notice it earlier on, it's going to be an easy goal to overcome. But if you keep on neglecting it until it becomes a really big problem, then it's going to be a difficult goal. And also, sometimes difficult goals, it may just be that the outcome or the expected outcome is supposed to be really long term. And we find it very difficult to imagine the things that we have to do to reach that goal. And stage four, which I also believe that we can think about earlier on, is liking. So with bad habits, the only reason that we kind of do it is because we either we like doing it, there's an immediate short-term gain, or we're just too afraid or something to do it right now. So the key to this is to figure out ways to bring reward in the moment, because the only reason we repeat behaviors, the only reason we keep on doing those good habits is because we enjoy them, or at least it doesn't make us feel like we're uncomfortable. So it's something to keep in mind. And one example of kind of building that habit of liking is kind of related to journaling. It's a habit tracker. And this is something that I've been trying to get into. So this is an image that I took from online. It's a habit tracker, basically like a month, and you can put as many habits or as few habits as you would like. And basically, the idea is that maybe you can use your favorite color, or for me, like green symbolizes kind of that accomplishment or success, as is the most common color associated with it, I believe. Um, so every time that you accomplish something, accomplish whether it be little progress or big progress, as long as you're going in the right direction with that improvement, um, you can fill in something, or you can like fill in the square with that color. And basically, over time, as you start doing this more and more, you may find that you don't really want to break your streak, especially if you've been on a really long streak in terms of accomplishing that thing or doing that good habit. And eventually, you'll just care about not breaking that streak and continually being able to fill in that good color. So that's something to do if you find it difficult to start out with, or if you just enjoy doing these types of things. So now I've talked a lot, and now we will just move on to our weekly mindful practice. And before we do that, I would like us all to take 3 deep breaths. So breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. All right, enjoy. All right, now that we are finished with our mindful practice, since this is a particularly special session, it's a little bit different from what I usually do. We will not be having a discussion session, but one thing that I would like us to think about is some specific, maybe start noticing. That's the first step of that habit formation. Notice with that kind of mindful mindset some things that you might want to improve, um, and kind of practice that process of habit formation that we discussed. And this is just a suggestion. You can do whatever you want to do. But we will conclude the session with a quote relating to what we talked about, which is breaking bad habits, being 1% better, focusing on techniques that James Clear talked about. And this quote is also from James Clear. So, with outcome based habits, the focus is on what you want to achieve. With identity based habits, the focus is on who you wish to become. Thank you all so much for coming to this mindful moment session. It was an honor to be able to speak and to you all. And I hope you all have a mindful week ahead of you and a mindful summer.